It's like a super conference. It's going to be super conferences. It's probably going to be maybe 3 of them. It's going to be
Okay.
probably the Pac-12 over there on the West Coast. Then it'll be the Big Ten, and then it'll be the SEC. And then
Okay.
that'll be it. Those teams will compete as a high level. It'll be 25 teams in the SEC. It'll be 25 teams in the Big Ten. It'll be 25 teams in the Pac-12. Like, this is actually going to happen within a couple years. They're going to split the divisions out probably 5 teams apiece. You know what I'm saying? And then they're going to have a championship game on probably one side, another championship game, and then you're going to go through these college playoffs because they're about to go to a 12-team system where these teams get an opportunity to, make it to the college football playoffs and then earn money in that perspective.
Excited about today's episode. I have 2 great people on it with me, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am. We all know 2,000% raise is about elevating your game. In literal sense, it's talking about leaving your job in corporate America and being an entrepreneur and striving on your own and giving yourself the 2,000% raise and building equity in yourself instead of building equity for other people. But 2,000% raise also has multiple other meanings. And there's 2 people I'm bringing on today that indicate that just wholeheartedly. Anybody that's a football fan, especially a fantasy football fan, should know exactly who Roddy White is. Great player for the Atlanta Falcons for many years, did some awesome things, and he'll be coming on the show later today. He's a co-investor with me on the cap table of a company called MoneyLine. We have the founder of MoneyLine on the show with us today, and I'm excited to bring him in here today. Talk about someone that's done a lot with a little, and that's an early stage venture capitalist dream. I'm going to tell you right now, when I first met this guy, there wasn't much to talk about. I mean, he had this great idea. He had a few of he's probably going to get offended by this. He had a few of his college buddies using his app. Things were going in the right direction, but gosh, he had a long road ahead of him. Put in a little money. No, I mean, a very little amount of money, but worked out a deal with them where I said, hey, listen, man, I believe in you. I like you as the founder. You got some grit here. You're obviously very well-versed, but this space, what a long road. If you get to where I think you could get, if you get to half of where you think you're going, I would love to come in and play a bigger role with your organization. And here we were about a year and a half later, and he gave me a call, told me where they're at, and quite impressed with this young man. Without further ado, I want to introduce Cole Warner from MoneyLine app. Welcome to the show, Cole.
Hey, John. Appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk shop today.
Awesome. Why don't we start off with you just telling us a little bit about your background, maybe your age, where you're from?
Yeah. So I grew up in kind of the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, and then went on to go to LSU and actually had a background in sports marketing. Graduated from LSU and really started MoneyLine on the side and had another marketing and sports marketing job for a little while, actually. Bootstrapped it, Jason, my co-founder, and I, just a small $5,000 investment between the 2 of us. And from that, eventually grew it as a free-to-play game where people could actually make sports predictions completely for free and cash out real money, and grew that to over 200,000 players. And then from then, we really reworked the gameplay to now offer a real money fantasy game, are live in around half the US, and then have the free-to-play game in the other half, and growing steady, as you know.
So let me ask you this. Before we get into the details of some of the things you just said there, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of investors, angel investors, or maybe wannabe venture capitalists or actual venture capitalists that have these same questions. All right. We're all looking for the next big thing. Okay. And one of the things I look at is from a federal standpoint, what's about to be legalized, what's coming down the pipeline. So I think for years, cannabis, everybody's talking about marijuana, right? The New Jersey Supreme Court decision, I believe it was a couple of years ago, Cole, you could correct me on that, changed the outlook for sports gambling. And, that's something where we're seeing this emergence, especially in the tech space, for opportunities from entrepreneurs around sports gambling. And I think a lot of founders and a lot of investors are banking on the idea that it will become legal on a federal basis sometime in the near future. Could you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, of course. So what we did when we transitioned from the free to play to real money game is we actually looked at the fantasy sports laws. Now, the fantasy sports laws came into play actually even before sports betting was legalized in that Supreme Court decision that you mentioned earlier. So what we did is we looked at those fantasy sports laws and saw that at a bare minimum to create a fantasy sports entry in the United States, you just needed 2 players from 2 or more separate teams in that entry. So for example, with NFL coming up around the corner, if you picked, over under on Aaron Rodgers passing touchdowns and over under on, let's say, Austin Eckler's rushing touchdowns, that would be considered a fantasy entry.
These are what the gamblers would consider prop bets, correct?
Yes.
All right.
So it's basically a prop bet parlay.
Okay.
Is like to call it.
And I just want to pause right there because you say it like it's so second nature. When I heard this for the first time, I questioned you a couple different times. I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me prop bets that we parlay is considered fantasy football, and that was head scratching to me, right? Is this a loophole, or did they intend for this to be the case?
So when they created those fantasy laws, it was initially for your more traditional daily fantasy sports like FanDuel and DraftKings.
Okay.
But as fantasy sports evolved and the customers kind of took hold of what that meaning could be, we really just took the bare minimum of those requirements and ran with it. And with those requirements, we can get into as many as 45 different states across the U.S. as we acquire the different licensing that we need to enter into those states.
Awesome. All right. So you've now built this player base with the equivalent of parlaying prop bets. You have a free-to-play game, but they're also using real money because of what you just stated with the fantasy laws. Why did DraftKings blow up? Why did FanDuel blow up? Because they're already existing fantasy, right? Yeah. So sports gambling becomes legal. They decide to become sports books. They already had all these fantasy players that we know at least have a little bit of an itch for gambling if they're playing fantasy football in the first place, right?
Yeah.
You're tackling the need to fill that appetite in these states, especially in these states that FanDuel and DraftKings have not attacked yet. So, like for instance, I'm in Illinois, right? I'm in Illinois and California. The biggest thing that's different when I watch TV in Illinois versus California is that in California, every other commercial isn't for DraftKings or FanDuel. I mean, there is a land grab. And they're spending a crap load of money for this. They have to be. The advertising I'm seeing from the billboards to the TV ads. Gosh, I mean, during NFL Sunday, every damn ad is for that. And Cole, let me switch gears a little bit here. Could you comment on the money that is being spent in this land grab in the states that sports gambling is actually legalized? We're talking about $1,250 free bets, or hey, if there's one 3-pointer in the next 9,000 NBA games, you win. What the hell? No, you know what I mean? Explain to me how as a sports book they're able to pull that off.
Yeah, well, it's a couple factors, right? And first and foremost, the reason they're doing that is because when you look at all the sports books in the U.S. today, they're basically a 1-for-1 comparison of each other, right? There's no real differentiation factor in those sports books. So what they've resorted to is offering these massive promo codes or deposit bonuses, like you're saying, so they can get that person's attention and get them to stick with them, or at least start with them. And then second, these companies, especially like FanDuel and DraftKings and even Caesars, BetMGM, they're big companies, right?
Yep.
They can afford to lose some money in the short term. Right. So that they can make it back in the long term. A lot of people don't know this about FanDuel and DraftKings, but neither one of them have ever made a profit. And combined last year, FanDuel and DraftKings lost $1.5 billion. That's with a B, billion.
Wow. And it's because of advertising for the most part?
For the most part, it is marketing spend, right? Like those sports books are acquiring customers anywhere from $300 at the absolute lowest end all the way up to $1,000 in some of the more mature markets, like you mentioned with like New Jersey or Illinois. When you compare that to what we're doing, we get a new paying customer in the door under $40, right? So that's another reason that we're such a good funnel for these sports books is because we can get people in the door at a fraction of the cost.
That's awesome. And what you just said from an investor standpoint, Cole, is critical to understand. I don't want to turn this into, a solicitation for investing in MoneyLine. It's private, and that's not what the show is about. But what you just said there, the ability to really duplicate what FanDuel and DraftKings were originally doing with their fantasy football database, and do it strategically another way to gain potential gambling customers. I mean, that's huge. And could you comment a little bit? I don't think our audience would all know this. How is DraftKings and FanDuel funded? How are they able to stay in business with these losses? I think most of us could look at Caesars and MGM and understand it. Walk down the Las Vegas Strip. People are giving money away in 3-card poker and roulette. Lose what you want on the sports book. How are DraftKings and FanDuel able to do this, Cole?
Yeah, well, so they started off actually pretty similarly to MoneyLine, right?
Okay.
As a both private companies that actually took venture-backed money for the longest time before FanDuel got actually purchased by a bigger gambling company called Flutter. And DraftKings obviously actually eventually went public and IPO'd at around the $4 billion mark, right?
Wow.
So DraftKings, for example, I want to say they raised, even before they went public, upwards of $500 million in private capital. So even before they went public and took advantage of the capital they could get in the public markets, they were a very well-funded company to take on not only the fantasy space, but obviously the sports betting space that they are now in.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And I want to go back to something I said earlier when, I had said you're solving for two things. The one being the funnel into DraftKings and FanDuel, but I never mentioned the second thing you're solving for. And that is training the novice gamblers, as what you said, the kind of like the minor league of gambling to potentially become major league one day. And as a society, it's interesting. I think of, what was it, Back to the Future 2 or Back to the Future 3, when they go back in time and it's Biff's world, because every gambling's everywhere and there's prostitution and whatever. And I think politically, that's why the sports gambling thing probably had so much resistance over the years, right? Of what it could turn the world into. And now we're in this position, and I by the way, I'm not against it, and I'll be the first to admit I've gambled illegally for years, like a lot of people did with with their local bookie or whatever. I guess it's interesting, the attention that the big dogs now are putting into, hey, let's not only groom people to become bigger gamblers, let's also focus on the fun stuff, these prop bets.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy if you think about it. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this as an investor in a gambling company, but anyone that understands it will know that the biggest juice, the biggest house advantage, it's the most profitable bet for the casino typically is the prop bets, or maybe the multi-game parlays could exceed it a little bit. So, I think that then puts MoneyLine, from a business standpoint, let's go full circle here, really in this crazily, insanely awesome position, because you're acquiring these players, you're teaching them through prop bets, by the way, through multi-game parlay of prop bets, the two most profitable centers for the sports book. So it would just really appear to me, and this is why I got involved, Cole, that MoneyLine is going to be quite attractive as the years continue to develop.
Yeah, completely agree. It's kind of twofold, like you said, as well. It's because that those sports books have such a high margin on those player props as well as those parlays. It's almost as a reason we can exist. Whereas now, if you were to go make a similar type parlay entry, on, let's say, DraftKings, for example, for two players, like I mentioned, let's say Austin Eckler's rushing touchdowns and Aaron Rodgers passing touchdowns, you're actually more likely to get better odds on MoneyLine than you are on DraftKings now. Which is pretty awesome on our end, right? Because we can now actually compete with their margins. But that's because they, like you said, they rely so much on those margins. Because on your standard, let's say, Bears -7 spread or +7 spread, they're only typically getting a 5 to 6% margin, right? So they really have to juice up those parlays to kind of say gain back that margin over there. Whereas that's all we do. So we can actually afford to bring it down a little bit and give the players even a better kind of juice, if you will, over time.
If people don't understand the actual lines on a game, if you're going to take say the Patriots are favored by 3 over the Falcons, it's typically going to have 10% juice on each side.
Yeah,
one side's going to win, one side's going to lose, and the casino is going to want it to. The sportsbook's going to want it to be 50% on one side, 50% on the other side of the bets. That's what the line's there for. So the casino's making 5% in total on all of that action. If you look at prop line bets, you'll and you add the juice up on each side, you'll see there's a substantial difference than just the -10 on each side.
A lot of times they're -15 to all the way up to like -130, right? So it and depending on the player and the sports book itself, it really can range pretty heavily. And that's where another reason we found a lot of success, right, is because someone can come in and not have to worry about having, let's say $100 on -130. For us, you just make 2 quick and easy picks and you can win over 3x your entry fee, right?
Yeah.
A quick $100 wins you over 300 for 2 right picks.
Okay. Any insight on why that same game parlay is an issue? Is it just to stop degenerate gambling, I guess, to try to stop someone from making the comeback on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, so I truthfully don't have too much insight into exactly why. I do know it's legal in a handful of states. And I actually do know it's FanDuel that came up, I guess, with the exact wording of same game parlay.
Okay.
And I knew a couple other sports books had an issue with offering a similar type thing, and FanDuel sent them a quick cease and desist.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
But no kind of insight onto exactly why some states would allow and some states won't. Because again, like you're saying, there's nothing really about a same game kind of parlay that would be any different from any other that a sportsbook's going to take.
It seems like an antiquated rule that over time is going to get diluted and probably just disappear. It doesn't make any sense because there's a million things you could gamble on now. Who cares if you bet on that? So switching gears, when you're out there talking to VCs, Cole, you're still considered early stage. You've raised a little bit of capital. I don't want to talk about valuation or rounds you're in right now, just because again, I don't want this to come across as a solicitation to our audience. But could you give some general insight on a company like yours and what they base the valuation on typically, and also what kind of return on investment are early stage VCs in this space looking for?
Yeah. So for your first question on really how a company like us is valued, and this differs extremely based on the industry you're in, right? So like, because we're in sports gaming, we're valued very differently than from someone, let's say, who's in market research, like my co-founder's previous business was in. But for a sports gaming company like ourselves, we're really valued on our current total customer base, right? So when you look at like our customer base of depositing players, that's really what we've seen the companies in our space that have been acquired have been valued on, right? So I'll talk kind of briefly on 2 that have been acquired in the past, let's say, 1.5 to 2 years. The first was a Monkey Knife Fight, which was actually the first company kind of similar to our legal model that offered these fixed odds fantasy parlay type entries. Okay. And they were acquired for a little under $100 million by Bally Sports with actually a little under 80,000 total customers.
Wow. Wait, so say that first number again.
So a little under, so I think it was 90 million total.
With 80,000 customers, 90 million total.
Customers,
all right.
90 million. And then the next one is even a little bit bigger, or I wouldn't say bigger, but the differentiation between the customers and the amount is definitely a little bigger. But Betcha Sports was acquired by Vivid Seats. Actually, now it's known as I believe Vivid Picks in the App Store. But they were acquired for I think 65 million, if not 60, one of the two, with only 15,000 total depositing players.
Wow.
Well, and again, so this is really based on a handful of things, right? And it's because we are in this fixed odds fantasy space. It's because our customer acquisition numbers are so much lower, right? They're not just purchasing this company for their total customer base right now. They're purchasing you for your ability to continue to do that and scale up and kind of run those customers through your product and potentially push them through kind of whatever product they may be, whether it's a ticketing app like Vivid Seats or Bally that has kind of a sports book behind them as well.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you look for those, I guess, I know the word's overused and I hate using it, but you look for those unicorns that are the 20 times plus. But you get a lot of talk, especially right now with, tech. Maybe expectations should not be as high for investment returns. And, I've had even some founders tell me on some of the companies I'm invested in, tell me, well, we don't want to say it's going to be 5x 3 years from now because, we know you guys are looking for 10 and 20 times. Let me just make clear to anybody listening, if I invest in your company and you return my capital 5x and it's only like 1 or 2 years, I am okay with that. Okay, everybody, I am okay with that. I don't know who these investors are that are not. Okay, and I'm jesting. I obviously am kidding. I understand exactly why they would not be, but I am okay with it.
Most people are in that boat as well. Most people would kill for those type of returns, but the VC model is slightly different.
Hey, so you got 2 pretty high profile people on your cap table recently. Could you tell us who they are? I had already mentioned one of them.
Yeah. So first off, so we're an Atlanta company, right? We're based here out of Atlanta. So it was awesome to get kind of a hometown hero in Roddy White on the cap table. I grew up watching him as a Falcons fan. So it was pumped as I got to talk to him and learn more and got him interested in MoneyLine. So it's great to have him on the team. And then we actually just landed Austin Eckler in our newly opened round as well. Pumped to have kind of, a former NFL superstar and a current NFL superstar now on the cap table. It's now really just kind of ready to close out the round and start growing.
Cole, who introduced you to those guys?
Of course, the best investor I have.
It makes sense though. I am friends with both of them. Roddy longer than I've been friends with Austin. I've met Austin more recently, and I don't go to I don't know, high profile or celebrity types of friends to bring them in to invest in things that I'm involved in. I just typically don't, unless it makes all the sense in the world. And, I've been walking around in the Bahamas with Roddy White before, and people come up to him and tell him how he won the damn fantasy league for them in 2011. And they want pictures with him and they're sending it to their old fantasy team. Look who I bet he kicked your ass in 2009. And you know what I mean? And I know Roddy likes, he gambles a little bit and obviously is a big sports fan. So it made sense to introduce him to this. And he was, more than happy to be a part of it. Austin, it's interesting, man. Kind of same with Austin, but a little bit different. When I first met Austin Eckler, first thing he said to me, man, this guy's 26 years old in the middle of a pretty damn sizable contract, and it's only going to get bigger after this next one's up. And he's already thinking about what he's going to be doing post NFL. And if you follow Austin on social media, he's talking about building a brand for himself. He's active on social media, is active in gaming. He most recently, I thought it was awesome. He has giveaways for people that draft him in their fantasy league. Like he's promoting himself that way. Yeah. So I'm learning this about Austin, about a year ago, and wow, what a perfect person to introduce this. And obviously Roddy and Austin both did their diligence. They're not going to just listen to me, but it really made all the sense in the world. And I'm going to tell you what, Cole, an idea could be one thing. All right. And any entrepreneur listening to this should listen very closely. And an idea is one thing. Okay. Execution of the idea is totally another thing. And I threw Cole curveball after curveball. And I think he just demonstrated to us he's very well versed in this space, and he's executing. So hopefully it keeps going the right darn direction, Cole. I'm pretty pumped up about this, my friend.
Same here. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go, Cole, and we will bring Roddy on and see if he has he has not been listening. So we will see if he has the same to say about us that we're saying about him or not. So
yeah. Again, well, appreciate you having me on, John. Thanks so much.
All right, before I bring Roddy out, I want to talk really briefly, a quick story that I think really summarizes the kind of character Roddy has. Earlier this year, Super Bowl weekend, actually in LA, I'm at a party in Beverly Hills, and I don't know too many people at this party. Mike Vick happens to be at this place. And we're making small talk. We're kind of sitting in the same area, cordial to each other, and, just making, shooting the shit. Again, I don't really know too many people. I end up mentioning in the course of conversation, totally name dropped your ass, Roddy. Totally name dropped you. I mentioned in conversation that I'm friends with Roddy. Mike Vick's total demeanor changes. I went from being just some dude at this party that he's making small talk with to him walking me around, introducing me. Hey, these are my boys from high school. Hey, this is my agent. And I got to tell you, man, this shit doesn't happen because you're a good football player. This shit happens because you're a good person. And anybody that knows Roddy White or has had the chance to encounter this guy, just like an all-around awesome dude. You ever hear of like that hot chick that doesn't know she's hot, so it makes her even hotter? Kind of a weird analogy there, but that's Roddy White. Welcome to the show, Roddy.
Man, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, John, for having me on today, man. Cool. I really appreciate that story. That's my guy, man. That's like my brother. So,
yep.
We always gonna be like that, man. Ever since I met him in 05 when I got drafted, man, we've been tight ever since. So, man, I love that guy to death, man. And I'm happy to hear that for you, man. He closes people off instantly, man.
Well, I'll tell you what. So he's involved in this venture deal I'm in. It's called Gaming Society. He was helping out with a podcast they were doing. And Kevin Garnett, the basketball player, owns the company. So Kevin Garnett was there too. So Kevin Garnett kind of had, he's an imposing dude, right? Mike Vick kind of blends in with the crowd. Yeah. I mean, you got to kind of know he's there. Yeah. He's not a big guy. Switching gears here, a year ago, I think you became, or maybe it was 2 years ago, you became eligible for the Hall of Fame. What's the outlook looking at there? And could you kind of shed some light? You had said something to me once that not having that Super Bowl ring might work against you a little bit. Where's your head at with that in the committee?
I mean, I'm just happy to be on the list, to tell you the truth, that people actually thought, or considered me for the Hall of Fame. When you play football, I mean, you go out there, you try to make as many plays as you possibly can and win as much as you can. But at the end of the day, when you line your statistics up with other guys that have been in the Hall of Fame, you feel like you got a chance. I'm just happy that people recognize me as just having a chance to even make it that far, to even make it to that point. And it says a lot about the guys that, I was competing with along with, during my era, Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson. I was there for the tail end of Torrey Holt. Marvin Harrison was still in the league, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. So all these guys at the wide receiver position, throughout my career, I was either, competing against on the field, even though we're not going against each other, we're going against each other.
Right.
Yep. Just competing with that era. And there's so many guys that during that time that I played with, that have made the Hall of Fame. And, those guys are amazing receivers. And to be mentioned with those guys, man, it's unbelievable. It's remarkable for me to have that opportunity. But, maybe one day, don't win a Super Bowl. It's hard to get in there unless you got, ridiculous TO stats and stuff like that.
I'll tell you what, man. I was sharing a story with Cole Warner before you got on the call here. From Cole Warner, as you know, from MoneyLine. And if there was a fantasy football Hall of Fame, you would already be on it.
Okay.
Everybody that knows fantasy football knows Roddy White. I mean, I told them a story about how we're walking across the casino and people are stopping you to take pictures because you won fantasy for them in like 2009 or whatever.
Oh yeah, I was hot then, man. I was catching 100 balls a year.
So, Roddy, I think arguably, or if not definitely, UAB is where you went to college, and again, arguably, if not definitely, you're probably the best player that came out of there. What made you choose UAB over, maybe some of these Power 5 schools? Is there a story behind that?
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. Actually, man, I was getting highly recruited, going into my senior year in high school, and about midway through the season, I had a lot of offers: NC State, Georgia Tech, Florida. I had probably Memphis, Louisville. I mean, these schools would, consistently come in and out of our school to come see me. But at the time, I didn't pass my SATs. I didn't make a high enough score to actually get into any of those universities. So, of course, the coaches were they're adamant of me just continuing to take the test, and which I did up until the end. But my high school coach had a really good relationship with the offensive line coach, Coach Vanderhayden at UAB, and they had all been to Clemson together in the 80s. So my high school coach, he had played at Clemson in the 80s, and Coach Vanderhayden was one of the coaches there. So he had sent my film over there, and Coach Vandy was like, "All right, we're gonna just offer him a scholarship." And at that time,
even though, and for clarification for the audience, it's back then, it's the same as it is now. UAB doesn't have any different standards than the rest of these schools. You got to pass that SAT to get in.
Yeah, you got to pass the SAT to get in. But back then, I think it was like 5 conferences that did Prop 48s. I think it was the MEAC, Conference USA, the Sun Belt, and that was their type of advantage of getting guys that couldn't pass the SAT, but you could get them on campus and they could go to school and work on their academics as a freshman. They couldn't play, they could practice, but they couldn't actually play football. So you could just work on your academics. It would be like a redshirt year for you, and then you could start playing. So, I literally was taking a test, and I know UAB scholarship was always going to be there. So after signing day, I didn't really sign with anyone. So
okay.
I was like the outlier. Everybody else was signing letters of intent, and I just kind of waited around, just waiting for my opportunity to pass the test. So late April is the last time I take the test, and I finally make a high enough score to match my GPA to actually get in. Right. So as soon as I did that, my mom started calling all the coaches back from D1 schools, but they had already finished their scholarship requirements for that time period. So it was either they had already gave all their scholarships away. So it was either wait till next year to enroll into the school. And my mom was like, hell no, you're going to college. So that's why I ended up going to UAB. And they ended up, what I loved about them, they ended up still saving my scholarship. They waited on me. So
see, that's loyalty right there, man. And that speaks to your character too. I bet if you really tried, you probably could have found someone with a slot open in August that was maybe higher profile than UAB. And you stayed. Not only did you go to UAB, you stayed there, I think, the whole time. You had mentioned some great receivers that you played in the same era of. I've just in being friends with you the last few years. By the way, Roddy and I made friends. We both were invited to this golf outing where we were both given custom PXG clubs. Now, I don't golf, and this is going to make all you golfers out there cringe because anyone that golfs knows how nice a club's PXGs are. Everyone's like, dude, you got to get PXGs. Not only are they expensive, but they're hard to get your hands on. Go to this thing. So I fly out and I got these free custom PXGs. Roddy did the same. Now, I hate golf. Roddy at least is taking it up. Are you still you were new at the time? You've been sticking with it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Them clubs changed my life, though.
Okay, my brother has mine, so whatever.
If I would have never went down there and got them clubs, I probably I probably still wouldn't be playing right now. It's
Okay.
just like
Okay.
mine. It's like, every time I go out there, everybody's like, "Man, you got them PXGs?" I was like,
Yep.
"Yeah," and I got
It's
them,
a flex.
and I got them for free.
That pisses everyone off. The guy that doesn't need them for free got them for
Got them
free,
for
right?
free,
Yeah,
man.
that's
So,
funny.
man, yeah, I've been playing up and keeping on the course, man. I've been actually trying to get out there with Mike, but he's so busy during the football season, man. So we try to catch up and try to get out there on the golf course. So, but he's really good though.
He's making himself stay pretty relevant to the media. I see him bouncing around on different things, and you talk about a guy. I don't want to get into a whole Mike Vick conversation, but you talk about somebody, right or wrong, however you feel about some of the stuff he's done in the past. And Roddy, I'm not putting you on the spot. I know he's your teammate and your friend, but for the general audience, talk about overcoming adversity. All right. There's a 30 for 30 on Mike. By the way, that Roddy's in that 30 for 30, but there's a 30 for 30 on Mike. And, talk about someone that really overcame adversity and, right or wrong, however you feel about him. I'm going to tell you what his overcoming of adversity is undeniable, if you ask me. But anyway, speaking of receivers, Roddy, you played with one that's still in the league. He's one of your good buddies too, and I know this for a fact because we've bumped into each other randomly in Fort Lauderdale as well as a couple other places, and he seems to be with you about half the damn time. None other than Julio Jones. Now, listen, guys, I played at Notre Dame. I'm 6'5", probably about 270 or 280. I swear to God, I know he's not, but I swear to God, I think Julio Jones might be bigger than me. This dude is a freaking monster walking around with Roddy. But I bring that up, Roddy, because you guys were the two receivers on the Falcons. Who knows? Maybe if he wasn't splitting balls with you, you would have already been in the Hall of Fame because there was no Julio to throw to on the other side of the ball, right? Have you guys always been friends? You're not playing anymore. When you were playing on the same team, competing, everyone's got egos. You know what I mean? Maybe speak to that because I think this translates to the business world. You get those two hotshot sales reps in the same office, or the two managers where their shit doesn't stink. It's better for the culture if those two good guys both get along. It's better for that leadership. Was this always the case with you?
Yeah,
Julio?
from the standpoint when he got to the Falcons, I was like in charge of the room. You know what I'm saying? So at that time, I was the leader. In the wideout room. So when he came in, man, he was like a sponge, man. He was just wanting to know everything, wanting to learn everything, and just patient. And just going out there and just asking questions. We would hang together all the time, and like he would watch everything, and we'd have conversations that weren't even football related. He learned so many things from me and watching me go through certain things. And, he went about his things a little differently than I did based on, his ability to see what I went through, and from a friendship standpoint, man, that's like my brother.
Okay.
We've been together for so long, man. I love the guy to death, and I'd do anything for him.
So, I'm my ass is 45 years old. You're a few years younger than me. He's a few years younger than you. He's playing now. He's going to be the receiver for a guy I played against in college, which is frickin', if you really think about that, what I just said, it is crazy. So Julio's going to be taking passes from Tom Brady this year. And Roddy, it sounds like you're active with your commentating on the NFL and on your Twitter account. You post some things on Instagram. Any words for football fans on how you think that's going to go with him and Brady this year?
I don't see Brady ever getting in situations where they don't go good for him. He just doesn't do that. I mean, listen, when Tom Brady plays cards, he stacks the deck. He got all the cards. I mean, he got all the aces. Right. He got all the faces. Yeah. Like he's out there, man. He's ready to roll. So I expect them to have a real good season this year, and I expect them to do a lot of great things together, man.
That's awesome, man. And for all the listeners, I think you're kind of capturing what I was saying about Roddy earlier with his character and just an all around good dude. And I got to share just one quick story. Roddy probably don't remember this because this shit probably happens to him all the time, but you'll probably remember when I say it. Him and I are out, and we bump into Barry Alvarez from Wisconsin Badgers. And if you don't know who Barry Alvarez is, you remember this? Okay. So we had been together, whatever. My brother played football at Wisconsin for Barry Alvarez, and anybody that's a Big Ten football fan will know exactly who Barry Alvarez is. He's way up that totem pole, and Barry had recruited me and when I was younger and blah, blah, blah. My dad was a high school football coach. He knew exactly who my family was and whatever. So we're chit-chatting. And he doesn't know who Roddy is. Now, Roddy doesn't introduce himself as Roddy. He's very like, like humble, not humble, but like just like, mild-mannered in these situations. And Roddy also looks like he's about 25 years old, okay? And looks like he still plays. So Barry goes, "Oh, did you say, hey son, did you play football?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did. I played in the NFL for a minute, but I was at UAB before that." Barry starts like giving Roddy advice. So he's just assuming Roddy's 26. He played at UAB. Homeboy was probably like on special teams on the Rams or Chargers for a year or two. Now he's looking for a job. Barry starts giving him, I say Barry like he's my buddy, Coach Alvarez, I should say. I do want to give him respect. And he had a big cigar.
Hey, man, he was having fun, man.
He was having fun. And he had a big cigar hanging out of his mouth.
Exactly.
He starts giving Roddy advice on like how he's probably going to make more money in the real world now than he did in the NFL. And he was like trying to make him feel better about his situation. It was the funniest shit ever, man. It was the funniest shit ever.
But he was having such a great time, man. He had that stogie in his mouth, man. He did. Man, he was blowing it. He was having a good time, man.
Dude, it was right outside that steakhouse, too, man. That steakhouse is all right. If somebody wants to DM me off the show, I will tell you what steakhouse I'm talking about.
Why didn't he recruit me to Wisconsin? And then I.
Well, you know what? How about this for our audience, Roddy? So we got hopefully listeners all over the country, right? You talk about the West Coast right now. The big thing here is UCLA, and I think was it USC. Who's the other big Pac-10 team? There's a couple of teams coming over to the Big Ten next. I think in 2026. I might have those facts wrong. The Big Ten got Maryland and Rutgers to come over a few years back. Okay. In the Midwest, in Chicago, everybody knows inside and out Big Ten, and they're trying to make Big Ten a bigger thing. It was Roddy coming out, highly recruited. You had all those SEC schools, the ACC schools too, I'm sure. Were the Big Ten schools even on your radar screen? Did you even know the name Barry Alvarez? Is that a household name to you?
Yeah, I mean, I knew who Barry Alvarez was because I would just watch, football every Saturday, and Wisconsin would be on. And usually, I remember Ron Dane winning the Heisman Trophy and stuff like that. So, but I was growing up, I was a big Notre Dame fan. When you don't have cable, right? When you don't have cable, Notre Dame is gonna be on TV. Like,
right? Yeah. So let's switch gears here to there's two main things I want to talk to you about. Like I said, we had Cole on the show earlier, and he loves you, man. I'm going to tell you right now, he kind of pissed me off, just so everybody knows that caught it. All right, anyone that follows me on Instagram is going to know this. He said Illinois, plural, which I let people in the South get away. It's just Illinois, okay? So just for the audience, I did notice it. He was on a roll. He was nerding out with his gambling legality shit, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to correct this dude, all right? And then he talked about DraftKings and FanDuel losing $1.5 billion. And if you follow me on Instagram, a pet peeve of mine is when people say this, $1.5 billion with a B, he said. And anyway, so I'm just giving you a hard time, Cole. It is amazing that you have businesses like FanDuel and DraftKings losing that kind of money, but it's not, I guess it's not shocking with all the advertising they're doing. People come up to you in the casino talking about fantasy football. So you're in that gambling space. Your Twitter account talks about the NFL. It seemed like a very natural progression for you to get involved in MoneyLine. Could you speak to what you liked?
Yeah, definitely, man. I've been playing fantasy football since I was in the NFL, and actually hosted a fantasy football show with Drew Henson on Sirius Radio for about 4 years while I was playing. So I'm deep into the fantasy game, probably over a decade now, or maybe 12 years of playing fantasy football. So I've been locked in, didn't understand gambling and things like that, early on, and stayed away from sports books and stuff like that because, you just don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I probably the very first time I wanted to make a bet was probably 2009 or something like that. It was actually the NFL wasn't supposed to be betting.
Yep.
Trying to
I was going to say, what's the statute of limitation? I was just doing the math. I go, wait a minute, dude, you were still playing in 2009.
2009, like I'm in Vegas at the Super Bowl trying to make Super Bowl bets, you know what I'm saying, on the teams that were playing. So that's when I first went over there, and I thought like you give somebody, $1,000 and you place a bet, and they were like minus 110. I didn't even know what minus 110. I thought you give 1,000. If you win, you get 1,000 back. Like,
yep. I love that you just said that because we were talking about that with Cole earlier. Keep going.
I didn't
please.
even understand the logistics of it that whatsoever. So, it was my first, experience of learning, like, that's not how it works. Like, you gotta go up there, and the house got to get paid, and this is how they get paid, by betting and stuff like that. So that was my first experience. So I mean, when I got an opportunity to get into the MoneyLine, app, it was something that I know the common fan and football fans that just want to have fun and maybe want to play small wagers on things. One thing I know about fantasy football, people love players. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially all around this country, we got 32 teams in the league, and you can find a star on every team. And the ability to bet with your star, or the ability to go out there and place wagers, on the star player that you love the best, that's easy for the common fan to understand. So the opportunity to just get that chance to go out there and actually be able to join something that could possibly do that and get people to sign up, and you can just come out there and play instead of even get your feet wet by just playing and just not even bet money and then come on in when you feel comfortable. But people just feel comfortable with players,
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that separates MoneyLine from everybody else.
It's funny that you said that, man, because we talked with Cole about MoneyLine kind of being the minor league where it's getting everyone's feet wet, but at the same time, you might just stay in the MoneyLine world forever because if I want to bet on Aaron Rodgers to have more than 300 yards, that's all I care about. I don't care. I don't care if the Packers win by 4 points or not. You know what I mean? And that's that fantasy world, man. That is that fantasy world. I was never a big fantasy player. I've always been a parlay guy. I've made prop bets. I'll give you all the reasons not to make prop bets, but I would make those prop bets. And I'd be sitting there watching a damn Bears game with 2 minutes left. The game's over, and I hear the damn other side of the bar, 4 dudes cheering and high-fiving each other because Rashaan Salam just got 8 yards or some shit. I don't freaking know. But, Rashaan, people are like, Rashaan Salam, that's your example, Rashaan Salam. Anyway, I don't know why the hell I said Rashaan Salam. And I'll tell you, how the hell did I don't want to digress here, but how the hell did you and Drew Henson get paired up together? I mean, that's kind of an odd couple there, if you ask me.
I know, man. Drew's my guy, though, man. He took care of me.
Okay.
You know what? We got paired up at the Super Bowl one year. We were both out there, and I was doing they call it runway radio walkway, where you just do like 1,000 interviews, like back to back to back to back until you get to the end. So you start on one side of it, and it's like 30 people that you see, and they're asking you questions about the Super Bowl, about the team, what you've done in the season, and things like that. So that's how I met him. And then he asked me, are you into fantasy football? And I at the time didn't know what it was. And I was like, he was like, man, it's just like we got a point system. And he started telling me how it worked. I was like, man, that sounds fun. So I got his number, and we exchanged number. And I got into my first league, and I was like, man, I got no idea what I'm doing. Like, like, can you help me? And he emailed me a list of players, running backs, quarterbacks, all that stuff to get my feet wet. And then I ended up coming in second place in the league that year. So ever since then, I was like, dude, you're my guy.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then he was like, man, you want to do the show? I was like, yeah, man. And then we ended up doing the show which was good because we ended up getting guest appearances and stuff like that from other receivers and stuff like that throughout the year. So it was fun then.
And that was back when before Sirius and XM merged. It was when you had to pick one, right?
Yeah.
That's going way back.
Yeah.
Okay. Younger people don't even know what I'm talking about. What do you mean? Sirius XM's one company. I want to make sure I touch on what, we're with 2000% raise. We really promote this show as having a financial focus. And I'd really love your thoughts, Roddy. We talked about UAB earlier. Okay. A future guest on the show that's already booked is an entrepreneur. His name's Zach Oliver, and I wouldn't expect you to know that name or anything, but he's going to be on the show because there's an emergence of entrepreneurs putting things out that are going to take advantage of NIL, the name, image, likeness of the NCAA, which to simplify for our audience is giving the college football players the ability to make money, something that Roddy and I were both not able to experience when we played. Anybody that had a job at all, it had to be under the table. You're always kind of looking over your shoulder. I mean, I remember delivering Chinese food, and I did it over Christmas break, and we're allowed to over Christmas break. But as soon as school started back up, I wasn't allowed to. And well, shit, where's the $40 I was going to make next Tuesday? What am I going to do now? You know what I mean? The reason I want to talk to you about this, Roddy, the UABs of the world are living, okay, when they're good. Take the South Floridas, or well, maybe that's a bad example, but even Louisville now, back in the day, right?
Louisville, Central Florida.
Thank you. Yeah. All those types of schools. You know what I mean? Utah is now in the Pac-10. I get it, but take Utah 10 years ago. Yeah. Okay. Listen, man. Okay. How do you keep the Roddy Whites of the world on your team when there's not when the transfer portal lets you fricking transfer now without sitting out a year, and you could transfer to LSU and make $600,000 next year? How the hell are the UABs going to survive? I'm already seeing, I got two alma maters, or, I went from Notre Dame to Northwestern. I'm seeing some of Northwestern's best guys, and Northwestern plays in the freaking Big Ten, and they're good, by the way, going over to Notre Dame. What the hell, man? I'm really concerned about the future of the NCAA. And I think the Northwesterns of the world will figure it out, but I'm really concerned about the UABs of the world. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my biggest thing would be, because how they're structuring it right now, it's going to be like 3 power conferences, and probably going to have about 25 teams in each of them, and they're going to rock like that. But I think they should do what the NFL does. And it's like revenue.
So wait, what you just said right there, though, I don't think our audience really even understands that. Could you like what I said with Big Ten scooping up UCLA and USC? Like, is that what you're talking about? It's just going to keep going?
Absolutely. This is going to keep going until it's like a super conference. It's going to be super conferences. It's probably going to be maybe 3 of them. It's going to be probably the Pac-12 over there on the West Coast. Then it'll be the Big Ten, and then it'll be the SEC. And then that'll be it. And those teams will compete as a high level. It'll be 25 teams in the SEC. It'll be 25 teams in the Big Ten. It'll be 25 teams in the Pac-12. Like, this is actually going to happen within a couple years. They're going to split the divisions out, probably 5 teams apiece. You know what I'm saying? And then they're going to have a championship game on probably one side, another championship game. And then you're going to go through these college playoffs because they're about to go to a 12-team system, where these teams get an opportunity to, make it to the college football playoffs and then earn money in that perspective. But the other guys, I think, as far as like other colleges that won't be in those Power 3 conferences, like, I feel like the NCAA should do a revenue sharing pot like the NFL does, because these schools are going to be making billions of dollars in these conferences. When I say billions, they literally, CBS just gave the SEC like $5 billion for the next like 3 or 4 years. So it's like, why don't we do what the NFL does? Just put it all in one pot, right? And help the little guys out, help the little conferences out, raise money for them. Because it's not like you're going to be losing anything. I mean, everybody's winning in these conferences. I learned 3 years ago during COVID, the SEC gave out $25 million checks to all their teams and their conferences for the losses that they incurred during COVID. I'm like, where do you get almost $1 billion in revenue just to give out? Like,
right. Yeah. Well, and isn't it funny too now with nil though, with the name, image, likeness? The NCAA is probably like, oh shit, good. We found a way to pay our players, and the schools don't even have to freaking do it. You know what I mean? It's like we could keep those millions there for the damn school. Hey, corporations, come over, pay these mothers.
Exactly.
You know?
So it's not coming out of their pockets. They don't care, man.
Yeah.
These are the people that love their universities, that love everything, that's creating all these LLCs. That's nonsense, and just connecting players to and saying he works here, and we're going to give him this for this. So I mean, it's bad for college football. I thought a long time ago, Steve Spurrier, when he was at South Carolina, he made a very good, valid points. He was talking about coaching salaries needing to be down and just paying every scholarship player a certain amount of money, every month. And he was throwing out at that time when he was at South Carolina, he was like, we need to give these guys between $3,000 to $5,000. That would have solved the NIL problem right there. If you get like $3,000 to $5,000 a month, you know what I'm saying? They have an opportunity to actually live a really good life while they're in college, So he was kind of just giving us a broad perspective of what should have happened. And then they didn't do that because they just didn't want to pay the guys. And now it's like the Wild Wild West. They got no control over it.
Yeah. And it's funny. Had the NCAA done something like that years ago, would there maybe not have been this push? Because the Supreme Court just turned it upside down. And I personally believe that you can't have what we're doing right now with nil and the transfer portal where you don't have to sit out a year. The two can't coexist. Okay. There needs to be some kind of incentive for the guy at Eastern Illinois University not to switch to University of Illinois without sitting out a year.
And that's why I said the revenue sharing would be great for everybody.
Yeah.
Because then you take the pot and you distribute the money to every school, and they get an opportunity to pay their guys too. I mean, and then everybody's happy, man. The guy at Eastern Illinois is still getting his money. Even if it's $3,000 and the guy at Alabama gets $5,000, it's still like I get to earn money each and every year and live properly. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Well, hey man, I'm glad I asked you that question. You have some really good insight on that. I think it's a fluid conversation. There's not a black and white answer to this thing.
Oh, no.
It's totally gray. It's all opinion, really, right?
Texas got 4 or 5 5-star recruit offensive linemen because they got a pancake company that pays guys $60,000 a year. If you're a scholarship offensive, if I'm an offensive lineman,
I saw that.
I am going to Texas.
Got a kick out of that. You brought up Steve, and we're going to finish up here, but you brought up Steve Spurrier, and his name's probably never going to come up on my show again, but I do have one funny Steve Spurrier moment. I played for Lou Holtz at Notre Dame, all right? Notre Dame, as you know, was the South Carolina head coach for a while, a few years after he left Notre Dame. And I feel like he turned South Carolina around personally. But
Lou did a good job.
Yeah, he turned it around. And anyway, Steve Spurrier, I think, was leaving the NFL, wanted to get back into college coaching. Anyhow, at a press conference after a game, somebody asked Lou Holtz, hey, what do you think about Steve Spurrier winning the head coaching job at South Carolina? And Holtz answered, he goes, well, I didn't realize it was open. And at the end of the season, guess what? Spurrier had that job. So anyway, there's some fortunate. Man. Well, hey, man, this has been awesome. I like to ask all of our guests to leave. It doesn't have to be business. It doesn't have to be sports. What movie do you want to recommend for our audience? Roddy White's movie suggestion is what?
I just seen Top Gun. It was amazing.
Okay, the new Top Gun.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
My son's seen it 4 times, so that's cool, man.
Top Gun, the old Top Gun and the new Top Gun did not disappoint me. It's just on point, man. They did a hell of a job on that.
Okay. I think you'll get a lot of agreeers on that one. All right. Well, hey man, thank you for being involved with MoneyLine. I could tell you right now, when you listen to this interview, you're going to hear what Cole had to say about you. He's just ecstatic. You talk about an entrepreneur able to get from point A to point B with very little behind him. Now he has Roddy White on his team as well as Austin Eckler. And nothing but sky's the limit. So Roddy, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Appreciate you, John, man.
Thank you for tuning in to 2000% Raise. You can check out more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and your favorite podcast apps. Check out the show notes for any websites linked to this episode. I appreciate you tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications, and visit me at 2000percentraised.com, as well as at John Cerasani on TikTok and Instagram. I genuinely appreciate you dropping by.